Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching The Political Vigilante. Well, we talk a lot about on this show about the environment. And one of the things I've talked about, and many environmentalists have said, of like, so we're in the middle of COVID-19, but as the environment collapse keeps happening, there can be worse and worse pandemics. This pandemic's bad, obviously, but there could be one that's way more lethal. What if there's one that at 20, 30% of anyone who gets infected dies? Rather, right now we're at 1% or whatever, 1.5%. Not that COVID-19 isn't serious, but it could, what if something was way more infectious and way more lethal? That could happen. And scientists say this has happened because as we destroy the environment, it makes it worse. How do they know this? Because there's all this research and what has happened throughout history. So a new study came out about World War I and the spread of the Spanish flu. So the Spanish flu kind of took off right as World War I was ending. So this study, a climate anomaly worsened World War I and the 1992 flu pandemic, new research suggests. So I talk about how all this stuff is interconnected. If we don't think that it is, so World War I, which is largely, was trench warfare in Europe. The unusual weather, which occurred in 1914 and 1919, included torrential rain and particularly cold temperatures, making the bad situation even worse. So it was cold, it was muddy, it was awful. And it apparently, and not only, so on top of that, then they just bombed the crap out of each other in Europe, largely France, that contributed to this. So this is what the study brings up. It's very interesting. New research also proposes, albeit speculatively, that the climate anomaly caused the pandemic to start by altering the migratory behavior of ducks, notorious carriers of H1N1, a type of the influenza virus. The constant shelling by both sides created vast wastelands, and when the rains came, these tortured fields became dangerous quagmires. Soldiers stuck in the mud holes often needed help to escape. So you're right, Grandma, what does this have to do with today? Well, America's currently bombing, 7 countries. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We saw this in Syria. So I remember when I had Fidel Kaboub on the show about a year or two ago, and I got to get him back on the show. I've emailed him and I've got busy and I forgot to, but I'm going to get him back on the show. One of the things he talked about, because he's an MMT guy and Green New Deal, is so climate change didn't create the Syrian civil war, but it exacerbated it because they had 5-6 years of really, really bad drought. So people working out in the farmland came into the cities, mainly Aleppo, which is where a lot of the fight. So it exacerbated the fighting. And then, of course, America's in there bombing it. So drought, which is we know is tied to climate change. Do you see all these things factor in each other? Well, that's what happened here. That's the study they realized, because talked about all the shelling created environments and there was stagnant water, and it changed the migratory patterns of these ducks. And they're like, ducks' fecal matter, basically there's shit in the water, and then stagnant water helps create, spread of viruses like malaria and everything else. But this Spanish flu, as the war was winding down, an awful pandemic was picking up. The H1N1 pandemic of 1918 to 1919 is often referred to as the Spanish flu, which is rude by modern standards and also inaccurate, as scientists and historians don't actually know where the pandemic got started, which is why, it's a Chinese virus. Maybe about Corona. Come on, maybe. Probably we should call it the Fort Detrick virus. Just a thought. The disease picked up steam during the spring of 1918 and hit with full ferocity in the fall the same year. By the time it ebbed during the following year, the pandemic had taken somewhere between 50 and 100 million lives. By the way, all these sort of temporary things are being set up in like California and other states like that. They've opened back up the Arco Center in Sacramento. All the shutdowns are happening now in California and elsewhere in America because Corona's spiking. So you can't sit there and tell me, oh, it's okay that we do all this fracking. It's okay that we bomb all these countries. You want to talk about how war exacerbates? So they talk about the shelling here changed, and the weather changed the migratory patterns of the ducks, right? So, but war, the shelling was part of it. Well, we've been sanctioning Iran. So we've been sanctioning them throughout this pandemic. So the pandemic actually got worse in Iran because of our sanctions, which is an act of warfare. We're sanctioning Venezuela during this pandemic. Do you see this? I'm just showing you that the war machine empire isn't helping any of this. It's not helping COVID-19. It's not. But back to this study. The kind of climate anomaly, they said, happens about once a century. That it happened during the biggest war humanity had seen up to that point, while also coinciding with some of the war's biggest battles, is unbelievably bad timing. We're just starting into the winter in North America and the Northern Hemisphere. They said there's a surge coming. The excess precipitation, along with cold ocean air hanging over the Western Front, may have altered the migratory patterns of mallard ducks. This is significant because mallard ducks are the primary reservoir source of the H1N1 avian influenza virus, according to the study. The resulting interplay of environmental, ecological, epidemiological, and human factors, war, bombing, can account for the exaggerated death toll experienced across Europe during this time period. When I say I'm an anti-war, pro-labor, pro-environmental socialist, it's because I know all of these things interconnect. When I talk about a Green New Deal, I talk about a real Green New Deal. You think this shutdown was bad? You think this pandemic was bad? It's not over yet. But again, we keep plundering the earth, extracting its resources. We know fracking, which Joe Biden says he's not going to ban. AOC said it in an interview. She's not bothered by it. Fracking creates earthquakes. We know that. I've done videos on it, how the earthquakes in Oklahoma have been worse, like 1,000% worse since fracking. It contaminates water. I mean, Flint, Michigan's water is still contaminated. We're bombing all these countries. We're spending all this money on war, and we can't even give Americans rent forgiveness. We can't even give Americans free health care. We can't even give Americans some type of UBI or just pay 80% of their salaries like they did in the UK and Australia and all these other countries in Western Europe. So I just wanted to give you a little history lesson from 100 years ago. We just had really bad forest fires all throughout the West. It's all interconnected. And if we don't want to learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. Thanks for watching the show. Support what we do. Like, share, subscribe. You're all making Gotham great again. Do your own research. Follow the money. Connect the dots. And shave your knuckles for justice. Boom. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please hit the like button, the subscribe button. Go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood and rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, where you can support the show. Also, I have a Bitcoin wallet, a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and an Ethereum wallet in the show notes. We're taking cryptocurrency. I have a Coinbase affiliation link. We're going to be getting on some other exchanges. So that's how you support the show. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. YouTube is unsubscribing us at an alarming rate. I have a PayPal button at GrahamElwood.com. I even have a Venmo at Graham-Elwood. There's a lot of ways to support our show. We are getting crushed by YouTube. We've dipped under 73,000 subscribers because of YouTube. Thanks for supporting what we do.